Yeah.
So
Oh yeah. Yeah, it has definitely has the charms. It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking
yeah,
the minute out today. I appreciate it.
yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, great. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, you bet. And I'd love to begin everything with we're coming up on the 4-year anniversary of this pandemic. How did you get through it and how did it change you?
So when I was right when it happened, I was in the process of selling my house, and so I wanted to sell my house, and I was going to move downtown. And this was before the pandemic even happened. So when I sold my house, it was in during the pandemic. I moved downtown. Downtown was a desert. I mean, literally, there was nothing going on downtown. Um, but quite frankly, I didn't it didn't change my life any. Meaning, like I would go to the office. My office was not too far from there. The only thing different about it is, I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't do the things like that. So I just pivoted and just did the things that I could do to keep, active.
Yeah.
Do a lot more outside, do a lot more of those types of things. So I made it a purpose just not to affect me. Would go out, wear the mask when I had to. If I didn't have to, didn't wear the mask. Um, but I just did my normal thing. I went to the office. I was literally probably the only one at the office at the time. So, but I would go to the office. Most restaurants, you had to order out if you couldn't go in. Um, or if you wanted to, you could wear the mask. But that was really the only thing. And I would say that it was affecting me is that, when downtown pretty much shut down, and so there wasn't really much you could do except um, stay on the trails, get outside, do a lot of that, be active. I was down for 2 days with COVID, and that was it.
Gotcha. Yeah. I'm an IT technician by day, so when they went to spring break and they gave all the kids the day off before,
Yeah,
it looked like the rapture happened because I was an essential worker. I had to go in the rooms and it was so
right.
weird because I just kept thinking, well, they're going on spring break. They'll be back afterwards. And then no, another 2 weeks. And then of course it turned into this
Yeah,
long stretch of time. So it was bizarre. I think the absence of people was one of the weirdest things because I also interviewed somebody on my jazz show that was in New York at the time. He was in Times Square, right? Had an apartment right off of it. And he was like, there's no one out here. That was freaky because, Times
yeah,
Square is the capital of people being out and about in the world. And it was
right.
like nothing was happening.
I had to go to Chicago once, and that kind of what you were talking about. Chicago is on the highway. That's what I noticed it the most is probably being on the highway. Nobody was on the highway,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
It was
it
totally
was kind
bizarre.
of, it was,
Totally bizarre. So, I know you're an entrepreneur, you're highly driven, but let's get to the essence and the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day, and one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
so I'm the problem solver. I think I'm the superhero that companies call to get me to get them to the next level.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. Is I would say I work with companies that get uh, majority of companies right now that I run across is, they want to go to the next level. They just don't know how to do it. And
Yeah.
so that's where I go is I look at me as being the superhero is like they call me in, and then I can bring in systems, people, and then also on top of that, capital. And that's really what I work in.
So what did you want to be when you were in the third grade?
You know, it's funny you say that. So when I was growing up, everybody around me was firemen, policemen, all those things were kind of the name. And I was a farm boy, so um, at the time it was I wanted to be rich. That was kind of my mantra back then when I was growing up, and I didn't know how to do. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was back then. I was an entrepreneur back then already. I mean, I was doing things that my dad had helped me. We had motorcycles, so he would help me fix motorcycles. Well, then I started fixing my neighbors' motorcycles. and charging for that, buying motorcycles, fixing them up, and then selling them too. So that was my first thing for entrepreneurship
Yeah.
and kid. And I was probably 14, 15. So that was the first time that I got shown that.
So it's really been in your DNA from the word go.
Yeah, yeah, it has been. Yeah.
Yeah. So who's been a hero and inspiration for you in your life?
You know, uh, there's a lot of them that I go back to looking at in my life. My dad, especially, he's been pushing. He always pushed me. He always made me think about what I want to do. Working with when I was on the farm, it was a matter of we worked hard, and quite frankly, it was a it was kind of funny is that it was a hobby farm for my dad. I don't remember it being a hobby. This farm was it was a smaller farm, but we worked on it, and it was kind of I guess I learned the the idea of working hard. And then as I moved forward, I was a really hard. I had a struggle with reading, and so I had a Mr. Gindorf was I would say looking at back, he was one of those heroes that pushed me to read, and that was when I was in sixth grade, and so now I'm a avid reader. I try to read at least a book a week, and so he was one of the ones I think that really pushed me and got me there. And then going into I as I was going into county into college, I was at accounting. I had an accounting degree. I was going in to get my accounting degree, and it was hard for me. But one of the things is I had this professor, Andreessen, and he was one of the ones that kind of took me under his wing. He was tough as nails. You really didn't want to cross him, but if if you really wanted to be something more, he was the guy who was going to be pushing you behind from behind. I mean, little things like he would. It was funny. You walk into his class. If you had a hat on, you got to make sure that hat was off, because that was one of the things. But he was really adamant, but he was fair. That was the one thing I would say is that he was hard, but he was fair. And I remember those are people that I really remember. And now I have a mentor, and along the way, I guess I've had mentors, but Warren Rutstad is a mentor right now. He was on the cabinet for Ford, President Ford, and he's been a really good mentor. And I always tell people, I said, if you can find at least one or two mentors, it will make your life a lot easier. And I think that was one of the things I look at heroes, and um, Warren Buffett's always been a hero of mine. He's been, I think, looking back, and I've read a lot about him, what he's gone through, and how he's shown what he can do with that company. Now, Greg Abel, he's taking over, and there is one of the guys that I would love to meet. Greg he lives here in Des Moines. I think he's the one that's really running the show now, and I think that going forward under him, I think it'll do really well. So
So if you had to pick one business model out there, one company that you admire from an entrepreneurial standpoint, what would it be?
man, one, there's
Eh,
so many. I mean, there's so many good ones.
yeah.
I think what I liked about Amazon is how they pivoted. They were selling books, and all of a sudden now they're selling everything. I really think that Bezos, if you look at the number of companies out there that have taken something and ran with it, I think Bezos was probably the one that did, he was from the ground up. All the other ones started with something. You know, Microsoft started with something, Tesla started with something, and all those guys are great. I mean, I look at those guys. Facebook, Facebook, the idea. I mean, they all done really well, and they've pivoted in some ways. They've done one thing really well, then they pivot to the next. But I think Jeff Bezos probably the one I would say the most.
So of every day you wake up, you have motivations to not only help people to be a superhero, but to also evolve as a human. What is that motivation for you every day to continue to push and to get better?
So I get up every morning, and the first thing I do is try to think about gratitude. What am I grateful for before, and then from that is push myself to get to the gym. That's probably one of the things is I get up really early, and some days you just don't want to do that. You get up there and you're like, but I know if I do, when I'm done, I'm going to feel so much better. That idea is that even those days that it's hard, um, I know that when I'm done, I'm going to feel so much better with it. And that's kind of in the business. Same with the business. Things that are hard, really in the beginning, um, when you're finished with it, you feel that much better with it.
So, what's one of your favorite client success stories? One that always puts a smile on your face?
Oh man. Hmm. You know, uh, we did a biogas project, and it was a startup, and it was a struggle in the beginning. I mean, it was a startup. We did this biogas. It was a digester project, um, and right in the pandemic, so it was right in a lot of the stuff going on. A lot of the equipment we were trying to get in was taking forever. I would say if you look back, that was probably uh, and then we ended up selling the company. And so I think it was a great experience. I learned a lot. Um, I learned a lot about myself, but then I look back on some of the other companies that I worked with. There was a company called Primal Board that was a pet supplement company. Um, Great company, and one of my superpowers that came out of that is marketing. Is that I really love marketing, and I really started to see what that can do for a company. And the experience I had with that is it it probably wasn't the company did it do really well. When I left, it wasn't. But the experience that I when I left, all the stuff that I brought with myself, I can bring in with other companies. And a lot of it was to do with just the marketing side. On the biogas side, we 2x that very short time. It was a relatively short time, but we did a 2x, and it was only a couple years, and so it was relatively quick. Um, Companies were wanting to get into that space, and so we ended up doing that one. So it was a good experience.
So, of all of the things that you've done and accomplished and evolved into, what are you the proudest of?
There's a lot of things that I've been really proud of. Recently, I came out with my new book, Make the 10x Leap. That was probably, I tell people that was probably one of the most challenging thing that I've ever done.
Yeah.
It was very. I did it in a year. I had a coach, which I tell you what, the coach was really helped me. But I would say the challenge, and when I finished, was I'm done with this book, and now it's like, okay, I can do a couple other ones. And so that was one of the things that I came out of that. But I looked at it as I embraced it. That first 80% was a challenge. That last 20% of the book was I mean, it was night and day difference. And so um, but I would say that getting my CPA was probably another uh, really milestone in my life. Um, some of the things, because in school I struggled with in school, but looking back on that, some of the things that I could have probably done, you know, going back now back in and telling myself, uh, there's some things I could have done different.
So as an author, what was one of the more formative books in the very beginning that you read that really formed your love of reading?
Oh, when I was I think when I started, when I was a kid, it was Lewis L'Amour. You know, that was the
Yeah.
thing. Then I started getting into, a lot of business books, and I think there wasn't really. I'm going back and looking at any of the books that probably did is read quite a few books. I don't want to say um, Think and Grow Rich was probably one of the ones that was really big in that side. I read that, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, and so that was probably one of the ones that really. I think my reading style uh, picked up completely different in 7 years ago from what I was reading to now what I'm reading now.
Yeah. So if the end of the day everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show, what's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, it's interesting you say that. I'm driven, but I like to have fun. Sometimes people think that I'm too driven or too serious, but I like a venture, and I'm willing to take a risk if I have to. Uh, those are the things that I think I really enjoy those. Health is really important for me, and that's mind and body. And then I would say if you look at a venture, if I'm in disciplined, I think I'm pretty disciplined. Um, but but I do love to have fun. And sometimes people look at me and thinking I'm a little bit too serious. I do, when I get out and away from my work, I enjoy, you know, some of the things, just having fun.
Yeah, for sure. So if anyone wants to get your book, hire you, learn more about you, reach out, how can they do that?
Yeah, so they can go to make the 10x leap. They can go to my website, which is Bison Equity Group .com, or they can go to Amazon, and my book is there. So either way, and they can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Those are the
Right.
three places.
Excellent. Steve, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your
Great.
time.
Thanks.
Best of luck. I appreciate it.
Hey, great. Good talking to you, Joe. Thanks a
Thank you,
lot.
sir.